All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining tonight. We have our SROs here to give their end-of-year presentation on their data and both quantitative and qualitative. Before we do that, we'll just do our usual, round robin discussion if anybody has anything to share about, what they've seen or heard in the district. So we'll do that first before we get into the SRO presentation. After that, unfortunately, Jarvis was not feeling well, wasn't able to be with us tonight, but he did send me via email a message explaining what we were looking into. So if it's okay that I can read his response to the committee, and so people can have their questions and whatnot that we can track. And then after that, Octavia will be presenting on a systems health check that we'll finish off the meeting with. So yeah, so with that, we'll go ahead and get started with doing any roundtable discussions or any comments. So, I mean, if you don't have anything, you don't have to say anything, but just want to give people an opportunity to talk about anything that's going on in the district.
And it might be good to just do introductions as well as we go around.
Yep, good call. Thank you for that reminder. Something that I always forget, especially since we have the SROs here. So good to introduce yourself too as we go around the table. And again, if you have something to share about what you've heard in the district, feel free. So, Marissa, you want to go first?
I'm Marisa Salinas. I'm a parent. I have one kiddo in CFT, soon to go over to Fowler, and one in Fowler.
Nina Lee, teacher and building equity coordinator at Bridgeport Elementary.
Brian Miller, SRO at Tualatin High School.
And Brian Imus, SRO at Tualatin Middle School.
And Nick Nunn, SRO at Tigard High.
Moss Weigel, a junior at Tigard High School.
Dr. Lisa McCall, assistant superintendent.
Dr. Diane Watson, I have a son at Tigard High and one at
Fowler. Zinnia Un, Director of Equity and Inclusion and Multilingual Services.
Idalia Basoria Castillo, I'm a freshman at Tigard High School.
Henry Castillo, Vice Chair.
Yeah, Octavia, do you want to go?
Octavia Horn, Culture Salsa Coordinator, supporting district-wide initiatives.
Awesome. Thank you, Octavia. And yeah, I'm Jacob DeGraw. I have a son who is a sophomore at Tualatin High School. So awesome. I don't really have any updates other than, we're making some slow and steady progress on the annual report. Similar to last year, it's going to be mad rush at the end because that's where we have most of our work and data that shows up. So, but we will get that done within the next month and a half. All right, so with that, I think we will hand it off to our SROs. Or Zinni, do you want to kick them off?
Yes, I'm excited to have our SROs share just a little bit about the quantitative data. So just some, can you go back, Thor? Just our time together, share the stats, and then just any cool updates that you want to offer related to what you've been up to. I know there have been some events, some partnerships that you've been engaging in this year, so being able to share a little bit about that. And then we'll open up for questions. Just a reminder that the Educational Equity Advisory Committee started off as kind of like the part of the SRO task force and support as we talk about our partnerships and what that will look like. So we do that on an annual basis, and as we hear more about things that are happening now this year and some of the systems health check, we will bring forward any additions or anything else that you would want us to take a look at in improvement for district-wide, but then also anything that you are wanting to see as part of our agreements moving forward. So that's an outcome for a lot of this time, okay? So with that being said, let's, we can actually skip all the way to slide 6.
And also, as we do that, I apologize. I forgot to mention to committee members that we did create. I did create a document that we will be working out of, similar to what we did last year, where everybody can put their connections, clarifications, and conflicts, all that information. So, as a refresher to those who need it, if you go into our shared folder and go into SRO oversight and the 2025 or 2024-25 school year, and the 4C's feedback and insight. So within that folder is the document that we'll be using. And I did create separate tabs for each portion of our meeting tonight. So this first portion will be the SRO presentation. So any connections, clarifications, or conflicts that you have regarding this portion, please place them in this document. All right, go ahead.
So Tigard's first slide is our report data. I did this, we were supposed to meet in February, so this data is actually only up to January 28th. That's about the time I got hurt, so I've been out of the unit. I come back tomorrow, so yay for me. So since from the beginning of the school year to January 28th, we as a team, there's 3 of us, we had written 71 reports. 66 of those were incident reports. So our incident reports are like first reports. So something gets reported to us, we take an initial report. 5 of those are supplementals. So those are what you would expect them to be. We took the initial report, and then afterwards we did some further investigation or something else was brought to us, and we did a supplemental report on our original report. So those are all kind of broke down. You'll see the majority, 22 of those are DHS, which is Department of Human Services. Those can come in from, the schools, can come in from reports like the night before when officers were out at somebody's house and they saw something and it got referred to DHS, or it could be like neighbors reporting some concerns. So 22 of those actual reports were assigned to us coming from DHS. I think the other one is the other kind of big one, suspicious circumstance or person, which is 15. So that can be anything. School reports, there's some suspicious person out at the football field, or some of those are, I think we had a couple where somebody reported something about a weapon or something. So those are usually kind of go under the suspicious circumstance type of call. So that's kind of that. I won't read all of them, but you got a breakdown of what they are. MIP in the next slide, you'll see MIP. MIP is minor in possession. The 2 reports that we have are both, the school district is pretty good about dealing with MIPs themselves, unless it's a repeated offense, at which time, the school district or the school deals with an MIP with one person, and, they do something, report to their parents, send them to some drug treatment, whatever they might do, and then the individual gets caught with alcohol or marijuana again. Then at that point, the school usually gets us involved and said, we tried to handle this ourselves. It obviously didn't work. Can you kind of help out as well? And that's, both of those MIPs are going to be those situations where it was a repeat incident, not like a first time offense. Next slide. Unless you guys had any questions about that slide specifically.
I guess one question that I have is I took a quick look at the data from last year, and like the numbers appear very similar. I get it was only half year. Are there any trends or anything, or would you just say it's been consistent year over year in terms of like what you're seeing?
I think it's pretty consistent. I think we're still seeing, and it might not show by the data because the school is dealing with those incidents, but the MIP, specifically like vape pens, have been huge. We don't take those as MIPs, but the school district will confiscate them and then give them to me, or IMUS. Actually, there's a safe in my office. They just drop them in there now, so I don't even know where they came from. But those have come, I think last year I had like 66 of them at the end of the year. So vape pens have been a real big thing, maybe that we're not dealing with, but the school has seen quite a bit of.
And then, Chair, are we wanting to, are we okay with like just having these open questions? Or do we want to capture any of that in the?
I guess that's a good point. Like, do we want to like take short breaks for questions or save questions for the end? I'm open to either one.
I
whenever.
think we have a little bit of time knowing that Jarvis is not here. So,
Sure.
I mean, I know that I have a follow-up question, right? So knowing that schools are, handling, those situations a little bit more with the first, incident, what does that look like when you're involved?
So honestly, at least at the high school for me, they usually come and get me. They're having me a lot give our eye test just to determine if, specifically when somebody's caught with like a vape pen, to determine whether the person's under the influence, because if they are, they have to send them home. So I've been doing a lot more of those tests than I have in the past, just to determine, can you tell if the student is under the influence, so we know, is it safe for them to stay here, or do we need to send them home? So it's a lot more of that. And then really the rest of it, haven't been involved in as much on first offenses. I might come in, do my eye test, might talk to them about, you know, why did you get caught with this stuff? I mean, what's the point? But that's really the extent of my first contact with most of the students.
I'd say like the first contact is educational. Like we're part of the educational part of it. Tell them the consequences that could be if this continues. Talk about the health concerns as well and legal concerns. So we keep it that way. The second one, or whenever we determine there might be an MIP, then we just go through that process with them, and it's just referred out to juvenile. It's not something where kids are taken into custody or anything. It's just referred out to juvenile, and there's additional resources given to them.
That's pretty much identical how we do it at 12th and high school as well. So.
And our second slide has to do with our referral. We, up until January 28th, so the end of January, we had referred 4 youth to the court system. One there you can see was an assault. That was actually a domestic. The girlfriend reported that she was assaulted by her boyfriend. There was a criminal mischief. That one, actually a student stood on top of the urinal and jumped up and down and actually ripped the urinal off the wall, causing thousands of dollars of damage to TTSD and almost flooding the school. And then you'll see the 2 MIPs that we talked about earlier, and all 4 of those, well, I guess 3 of them should have been, all 4 of them were reported by the school. The assault was reported to us by the school because the student made a report to a teacher who then came and reported it to us, and we investigated it.
And you're saying these were referred to the juvenile justice system, or they
Correct.
were adult referrals? Okay.
Yeah. So we'll write up reports and refer them to the juvenile system. About 80% is what I was last told are handled informally. So that means generally they see a juvenile counselor and they don't even ever make it to court. They just kind of handle it internally. They might get like some people might consider it a probation officer. They call it a youth counselor. But they're assigned one of those, and then, if they stay out of trouble, that's kind of the end of it.
So at this point in time, compared to the number of here, you said 4, is that typical or not typical?
Let me look. Last year, it's pretty typical. Last year at about the same time, looks like we had 5. So, I mean, that's pretty
Low.
on track, and 3 of those were MIPs last year.
Officer Imus, you talked about like the parts of supporting students and administrators was like education. I know that we've had data that has been gathered for the last, 3 to 4 years. Is there, and I'm asking this also just because one of the things that we try to do with like bias incidences and things like that is as we start seeing trends of like who's being impacted and things like that, do we think about ways that we can do some of the preventative and proactive education as a part of like a tier 1 support?
Yes, that's why we like to get involved in those first time offenses, because we're part of the team basically, right? Of trying to prevent this from happening again. So for instance, the vapes that we get 66 of, right? And we're trying to correct that behavior. And part of that is through education and telling them possible consequences that could happen, but also the health things with it. And then also taking some sort of accountability. That's hard for anyone to do, and especially teenagers taking that accountability. So having some of that accountability, talking with us. We'll work with parents as well too, because a lot of times parents will come in and say like, I've been noticing this happen. Like I don't know how to get it to stop, and can you help us with this issue? So.
And I think this is where, as we talk about opportunities for, I think, us as a district to help facilitate those opportunities, like, have you seen like an interest from either the administrators, and I know that recently you all met with our family partnership advocates around getting just like informational nights around like, hey, this is a trend that we're seeing in our community. These are the things that we're noting, and here are like even like taking like note of all the things that you have shared with students and being able to share that just preventatively, like even before it happens.
Yeah, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago. We were part of at Tigard High. We had a couple hundred kids come out, their families, did like a drug night through Tigard Turns the Tide. Myself, I was part of a panel, so I answered questions from parents that would come in. So that's one way we try to get in front of a larger audience and do that education.
Okay, so this is Tualatin. This is just from Officer Hernandez and myself. He's assigned down at Hazelbrook Middle School. And I actually updated our information from the beginning of the school year to April 23rd. So we had 66 total reports so far. And 34 of those were, offense, kind of like Officer Nunn described initial reports. 25 of those were supplemental reports. And then we had 7 referrals to the juvenile center. And I can go through all of those offenses, or if I don't need to, that's okay. If you have questions about any of those, we've definitely had a variety of stuff happening in Tualatin.
So one question I have on this one is, compared to the last year, the numbers do look a little bit higher for Tualatin. Do you have any anecdotal information on why that might be or where that is?
I can't give you a specific answer. I've been in Tualatin for a while, and we definitely have had ebbs and flows over the years. So I can't give you a specific reason why that is.
All right. Yeah, it's not a ton. Like the last year's data looks like it was 48 offenses by May 31st. So this one's on trend for about 20 more. Yeah. So I was just curious about that, but I understand that it's kind of difficult to track that type of stuff.
I wish I could. We can go to the next slide.
Before you go to the
Sorry.
next slide, can you just quickly define what AOA means?
Oh, assist other agency. So, maybe another outside agency, the police department might ask for a interview of a student. We had a couple cases, one from like Oswego, and I had another one from McMinnville. So,
Thank you.
and then here's our referrals. So we had a criminal mischief 2, went an assault 4, harassment, an assault 3, and another assault 3. That was same incident. The harassment, offensive physical contact, and then we had 2 MIP marijuanas. I put a notation on the side there, kind of like Officer Nunn and the Tiger guys. We operate the same way in Tualatin as far as first-time offenders for drug and alcohol offenses. A lot of education, but if they've had a prior offense, then they are issued a referral to Washington County Juvenile. And one of those referrals, the student was already on supervision with the juvenile department. So,
Is the gender balance normal? What's happening right here with the males and females?
we've had some, definitely some conflict and some issues with our females. I had another incident today with all females, a fight. And I, can't give, I don't know why that is. Just a lot of conflict.
And I said normal, sorry, I should have said, is the distribution similar to prior years? That's what I meant by normal. It seems like a lot of females.
No, I wouldn't say that it's normal.
Okay.
I think one thing to mention, I think what he also touched on this, was those assault 3 were both during the same incident.
Yeah.
So sometimes if you have a large fight, like last year, I had a large fight where 8 kids were referred, and those were all female, but it was a big, it was on Valentine's Day, and they all got a big fight. And so that really throws your stats off when one fight involving 8, females, now all of a sudden that totally throws your numbers out of whack just because of that one incident.
Yeah, I had another 3-on-1 today. So that's going to be
I'm going to ask to go back to the previous slide just because it's kind of bothering me and I want to bring it up. But there's 2 things that I noticed on this. One is just the difference in DHS referrals between Tigard and Tualatin, and I was just kind of curious about that. Just because it's 20, a little less than 20 between them. So I'm just curious if there's different connections there or processes or something like that. And then the other one is there are several, sex abuse related charges on here or documented cases. And I was wondering, is that one particular case or these are all separate instances? And it just obviously jumps out to me.
Most of the so the sodomy and the courtesy report sex offense, that's like same parties involved, just jurisdictional wise. The actual incidents, some incidents happen in our jurisdiction, some happened outside of our jurisdiction. But most of those cases are all independent of themselves. That's the only.
And I think some of those might be, we'll take initial reports, and if it's like a major felony, then those can get, at least with Tigard, those will get assigned to detectives. So large sex types crimes, if they think there's any validity to it, those will get signed to our detectives. And then, so we might take the original report, but we don't know what happens at the end, whether somebody got referred. Some of these cases might be an adult, and so they would get arrested, but we don't know because it gets forwarded to somebody else. And then with our DHS referrals, pretty much anything that comes in on day shift is referred to one of us. So I think sometimes Tualatin's detectives also do DHS reports, which generally our detectives don't because they're busy dealing with the other cases.
And our patrol guys and gals also take, they've been taught how to take DHS referrals when we're not in the office. But most of the cases that involve directly related to schools, Daniel and I will handle them.
I guess I was just wondering if there's a difference in how the community's approached raising the concerns to the school, or if it's a different, you have a different relationship with the agency, just different connections, I guess. I hope I'm making sense. So, yeah, it's just whether or not you just do something different about your approach as far as collaborating with the agency, or also if there's just a difference in how the community feels or responds to reports of abuse.
No, I think that, you know, if you would look back at previous years, you know, I feel like we've had more DHS referrals in previous years directly related to the school. I know I've had less. I can speak specifically to one school that in previous years generated more referrals for me, and so I think it's all dependent on, you know, all of our DHS referrals are initiated, you know, through DHS and from people calling and reporting incidents of potential abuse. So,
right, and there's nothing wrong with
in Tualatin right now, people are taking care of their kids.
Right, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. You don't want to have a lot of referrals. You don't want to have too little referrals.
Yeah.
But I was just curious.
Yeah,
that's all.
The other thing to keep in mind on any of these, especially like DHS, within Washington County, you know, we've got the Tualatin and we've got the Tigard, but then we have a lot of unincorporated. So if something gets reported, even though they go to Tigard High School or Tualatin High School, but their address is unincorporated, we won't investigate those or get those reports because they live in the sheriff's office district. So that'll get assigned to a deputy to do the investigation. So we don't do investigations on stuff that happened within the county, only within the cities. So that can skew things too.
Yeah, that's why I was going to wonder if the population difference could also have something to do with the numbers, because, you know, Tigard does have a bit more population than Tualatin, so I was wondering if that had a difference with the DHS numbers.
I added in the slide deck, I added some of the previous data that you were talking about, Officer Miller, so that you could see that too about what he said earlier related to DHS referrals. So those are there as well, and it's in the notes section. So like on 8, I added that link.
Okay, great.
I think unless other folks have any questions, I know we looked at the quant data. Is there, this is a great time for you to give any insight or updates around any community engagement. You shared a little bit, Officer Imus, earlier, but is there anything that you want to let us know about any engagement or things that have been happening at your sites and in your feeder system.
I don't really have it. I joked today about we've had 2 birds at Tualatin High School that I've saved. 2 birds. No, birds. Birds, flying birds. We had one fly in during one of our lunches. It was a crow, and he, I don't know if it was he, but I called him me. And he fell in the commons. He hit the window, fell in the commons. So I drug him out to the south lot, and I petted him back to goodness. He flew off. So today, Mr. Stanley, one of our associate principals, calls me right after our assembly and says, "Hey, Brian, I need you to come down to the main office. We got a bird that flew in the main office." And so I was able to save the bird and get him outside. So I told the group I was going to let you guys know about all the good things I'm doing.
You're getting life-saving awards.
I continue to I helped out with freshman football again this year. I'm involved in help coach girls golf right now. Earlier in the school year, I was able to go with the LEAP kids out to Washington, D.C. as a mentor, and they attended the CADCA conference. It's a big national drug prevention conference. So that was a great time, and we got to go to the Capitol, and they were able to talk to Andrea Salinas and Merkley and talk about their, what they want to see in this next budget cycle as far as money dollars helping out for drug and alcohol prevention. I try to continue to get into classrooms whenever I can. When requested, I still go into government classes and talk about search and seizure and any type of governmental issues that they inquire about. I go into freshman health classes and talk a little bit about sex crimes and kind of educate the kids on just what they do on their social media and the stuff to kind of keep them out of hot water. The sexting portion, and also a lot about dating and the sharing of intimate images, just as a preventative measure so that I don't have to try to clean up things on the back end. But overall, it's been a good year. I just trying to be involved as much as I can. We make it down to the Tualatin Elementary every year. We did it again this year, and we read to the kids. We've been to one of their cultural nights. So, yeah, that's what Brian Miller's got for you.
All right. Yeah, we do a lot of the similar things, just in Tigard. Last week I went to the multicultural night at Tigard High School, which was awesome. Really good food. I ran into some of my students from Tualatin. If you don't know, I've been filling in at Tigard High School while he's been hurt. And they reminded me that I owed them Starbucks for a bet that they made of hitting a volleyball enough times, which they said they did. I wasn't there for it, but they told me they got it. But they let me buy them some dessert there instead, so filled my bet. There was a nice free food table. I was working my way around the booths, and then I got to this table, and they were just like, "Hey, have some of this food," and I was like, "Great!" And I got my dinner, and I looked over, and there was a line out the door on the other end of the table. I was like, "Oh shoot, I think I just cut this entire line," but they gave me my food. So, whoops. I didn't mean to, but it might have looked bad since I was in uniform. something fun I did this year that I hadn't done before was I went on a field trip with the Black Student Union from Tualatin. We actually walked down to like an old folks home down McDonald Street here. They had me drive my patrol car and kind of like stop traffic so they could cross the road, and then we went inside and we played bingo with all the residents in there. That was super fun. The kids got involved and had like partners with all the residents living there, and then write out the bingo numbers, and that was super fun. Again, I've split my time between Tualatin and Tigard High School, so getting involved in the Tigard High School community the last couple months has been fun since I used to be there. But today was my last day there. Oh yeah, we have barbecues at the end of the year where we cook hot dogs, and the same kid that came last year that ate like 17 hot dogs, legit, like he came back and had the same. Did you have the same? I think he had 12 this year. Oh, 12. Yeah, he's slacking. But they give as many hot dogs as you want, which is kind of crazy. It's not like you get one. You can have as many as you want. This kid like comes and eats 12 to 17 hot dogs. It's legendary. But yeah, overall the year's been good. This is my last year. I'll be rotating out. 2 new SROs here in Tigard next year. So that's sad.
How long have you been in TTSD?
8 years. So I did 4 years at Tigard High School, and then came out for a little bit, and then went back to Tualatin for another 4 years. So maybe I'll be back in a couple years. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to say. Like Imus, I'll be out. I've got 9 years in TTSD, and so I'm rotating out as well. So yeah, I think we pretty much covered it. So.
I guess I have a question about that. Like with both of you rotating out, I mean, both of you have been faces, say pillars of the school community for a long time. What's it going to take for new SROs coming in to develop that same level of community that the two of you have been able to do?
I think like any new possession, it's just going to take time. It's going to take the school mentoring them and saying, and luckily there'll still be one of us around that they can call and say, hey, this is happening. What do you think I should do? But it's going to take a lot of mentoring and probably some patience on both the schools and probably the districts as they get up to speed. Hopefully they'll get picked soon and they'll be able to shadow a little bit so they kind of get to know before they're just thrown in and saying, here you go. I think that's going to be the biggest thing, is just some time.
Yeah, I think it just takes a little bit every day, honestly, like to build that up. I always said like you can't get to know every single kid in a school, but hopefully you touch enough kids where they have friends that have had interactions with you and they can trust you. So I think just building over time, building that reputation that with the kids that they can trust you, and that doesn't happen overnight. Like you can't expect a new person to come in, and that's a reason why we have SROs. We're a familiar face in schools that the kids can build trust with. So I think that's just going to be a matter of them showing up every day, building that trust, getting to know the kids, being in the halls, and just being present.
Can you share a little bit of the process of how SROs are picked?
Yeah. So for us, the process just closed. We have an internal open process. So there's some requirements, like they have to have 3 years of police service. But if they meet those minimum qualifications, then they can basically submit a letter of interest to our command staff. As long as our command staff reviews it and says you meet the criteria, then they set up an interview process. Interview process typically will involve an outside agency. So it'll be an SRO from another school, like Miller might come in for ours, and then it's going to be somebody from the district. Generally, it's going to be the principal or their designee, and then our direct supervisor, and sometimes a community member. But there'll be an oral board for whoever had put their name in, and after each oral board, they kind of score the individual, and then they determine who, in this case, the top 2 are. That gets forwarded to our command staff. they have a say, so our command staff could say, yeah, I don't think that person's going to be a good fit, and override it. Generally, they're going to say, well, if the board picked them, that's going to be the right pick. Then it goes up to the chief, and the final person, the final say is the chief. He gives them the okay, then they're selected, and they start in September at their new assignment.
Yeah, I think an important thing to remember is that everybody applying wants to do the job. Like we don't just have police officers that are assigned to do this. It's something we want to do. So they have to have an interest in working with youth. And that's great. And we're also reviewed by all our supervisors and our peers. We send out surveys and say, like, you've worked with this person, give us feedback on them. So you have a pretty thorough process to make sure you get the right fit. I really like that they involve, like, I think it's going to be principals from both Fowler and Tualatin coming in this year because that's the openings. And so you have your answers to your questions, but also, like, how are you getting along with the administrators you're going to work with day in and day out. So I think that's an important part of it.
Are students ever involved in the process?
Not that I can recall, but that is a fantastic idea.
I think it's been talked about. I think it's been talked about where school administrators have talked about, having somebody involved. There might have been one where we had somebody from student leadership involved in one of the interviews at one point, I think. But it's just hard because those are usually during the day when you guys are in class, and those can be like an all-day process depending on how many applicants you have. So getting everybody's schedule aligned can be kind of a challenge.
Is there a term limit? Is that why you're leaving?
Yeah, we have a 4-year. After 4 years, you have to rotate out for at least 6 months, but in our case, it's going to be a couple years because the next assignment won't be open for a couple years. So you do 4 years and then you have to come out.
Is it because it's like intense, like the vice unit? You only get a certain amount of years and then you have to go do something else.
It's to give people an opportunity. So if you had a permanent SRO position where you're in the school as long as you want, the three of us would never come out and nobody else would get an opportunity.
Got it.
So we have, at Tigard at least, we have very few what we call permanent positions, which means you don't rotate out, because they want to give people an opportunity to get new experiences and advance their career. If you had all permanent positions, we're a small enough department that people would get into their specialty assignment and just stay, and those working the road would never get an opportunity to do anything else. So it gives them an opportunity. It kind of stinks for us that really like the opportunities, but it is going into it, we know. So
Got it. I don't know what your CBA is, but sometimes with other positions, they'll do first and second round interviews. And if they're wanting to incorporate like the students or something like that, you can always do a first round interview with the people that you typically have that interview, and then do it with the community partners on the second round.
In Tualatin, they changed their term limits a while ago from 4 to 5 years, and then in 2023, I was able to convince our chief to create a couple of long-term spots in our department. And as an agency, he did create a long-term motor officer spot, which is a 10-year spot, and then he created a long-term SRO spot, 10-year spot. And so now I'm in a 10-year spot. So I can stay in until 2033, technically.
lucky.
And I've been in the schools probably since 2000. I came up here in 2009. I got into schools in 2011. So I've just rotated out like one. We'd have to rotate out one. So I got a 4-year spot, rotated out for 6 months, then ended up getting a 5-year spot. And now, so.
And you're not trying to tell us something now, right?
What's that?
You're not trying to tell us that you're leaving too, are you?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Okay.
I'm not leaving.
Oh, you're okay. Thanks. All right. Well, is there anyone else that has any other questions? Because I think this is a good actually transition to the next component. Because as you talked about taking time to build trust, one of the things that we're hoping to also do is support that partnership as well with our systems health check, right? Around like what is it that like when we were able to start the process. So Octavia's here. She's going to share a little bit of that. You're welcome to stay and join us to have the conversation, but I also want to be thoughtful of your time too. But the next part is basically just hearing a little bit more about how we are doing. I think you've been in those conversations, so right? So do you want to share a little bit about maybe some insights that you got when doing the systems health check? Because that'll also help us talk through what are the things that I know I have talked to the team here, and we had recently gotten some grants, and I think I talked to Chief McDonald as well around like wanting to partner and having our SROs join some of our after school programs to like do some of that engagement too. So those are the type of things that we're thinking about to just have more structured opportunities, because I know we talked about getting out into the feeder schools more. So is there anything that you wanted to share, offer insight about that?
I just think something like that, doing more of that, especially this next year as we get new faces in the school, is going to be real important. If we can get them out in front of these groups and get them recognized, that's going to go a long ways for them having successful careers working in the schools.
Thank you, team. Appreciate you. And then Octavia, you're going to lead us through the next part.
All right. My apologies for not being there, everyone. But I wanted to talk through our connections with our system health check with our SROs. And then we also was able to do a meeting with our FBAs and our SROs. So I wanted to highlight that as well. And we can go to the next slide. So in the system health check process, it was myself as the CRC, the facilitator, the SRO, the administrator and administrative assistant, the dean, building equity coordinator, and family partnership advocate. And the reason why we chose those specific people is because they have the most reach and touch points within the building. When we think about our administrators, they have the direct contact with our SROs. When you think about our deans, they do a lot of the discipline. And then building equity coordinator are part of our equity infrastructure, and our family partnership advocates who have that oversight with the families. Next slide, please. And so the way that we decided to do this is we wanted to sit around in a circle. So we were in a circle. We looked at the SRO and TTSD scope of work, and I don't know if we can click on that just to take a look at it. I don't know. But in that scope of work, just full transparency, was the first time that our admin and our deans and our FPAs and building equity coordinator had ever seen this document. Let alone know that we have this document created to support our partnership with SROs. And so there were a lot of just comments and information around that, like how do we support this as a team, since this is our first time kind of seeing that, and what we can go further. So that was the initial just imprint and aha that came from sitting down and kind of walking through what these are. And how we can better utilize and support that as within the school system. And then within the system health check process, we highlighted some domains to look at the indicators for health. The domains were relationship, development, communication and transparency, insight in sorry, health and safety, and what's this last one? Oh, professional development. And so within those four quadrants, we were able to look at a aligned statement of where each school should be at. And then we took a Likert scale of from 4 to 1 to kind of highlight where we thought we were at as a school. So for example, the Fowler example, and I don't know if we can click on that. Each person was, so I stated what the aligned statement was that we should be at as far as like our relationship with SROs. And then we looked at different activities that highlighted that. And then we went around in a circle and each person was able to state whether or not they thought that, we were at a 1 or a 4. And as you can see, everyone had their voice kind of captured in that. Um, and then as they kind of said where they were, we went into some conversations around why they thought that they were there. Most of everyone kind of was just like, this is the first time, I really don't know. And others really just kind of felt like they didn't have a lot of insight around, where we are supposed to be, since again, that was the first time they kind of had that idealism around the scope of work between TTSD and our SROs. So as you can see here, they were able to score and, do a further discussion. And then we have that average. And once we get the whole system, because I believe, as you know, like, Officer Nunn has been out and our high schools probably haven't been aligned yet. So we still need to make sure that we get those ones. We'll be able to share out the whole system and kind of where we're at the secondary level, to be able to see, what our partnership with our SROs are.
And then Octavia, can I pause us here? I think one of the things that we want to offer too is we didn't get a chance to talk through this with our SROs when they were here, but a few years ago, probably 3 or 4, there was a huge community and comprehensive 5 years ago. There's a huge comprehensive I think systems review of our partnership, and that's when we started having these outlined objectives. And so I'm a big believer that we want to do like cycles of like review, at least 3 to 5 years, right? So that we can make that connection. And so this, similar to other equity audits that we do within our system, allows us to then set priorities, and also every year we update our intergovernmental agreements with our city partners and police department. So part of this process is also getting your feedback and insight around, given what you see here as an initial review, and then what was shared with our SROs, what are some things that you'd want to see more aligned to the objectives? And I think one of the things that we also want to be thoughtful of is it takes quite a bit to actually put a lot of these components into place. And so being able to do an assessment and then target some of those efforts, I think is important too. So thank you for sharing that, Octavia. Any other insider questions given what Octavia shared so far?
I mean, the only insider question that I have is just the ability to review all of the data. Yeah, because as long as we're going to be able to do that at some point, I do think that would be important feedback to include in the annual report, because just looking at only Fowler right now, the Fowler example, the score for the communication and transparency, I find it a little surprising and concerning, because that's been a pretty major focus. And I thought thought that we had made a lot more improvement there, but I get that's only one school. We're only looking at one school right here. So I would be interested in seeing what that score is on other schools.
Yeah, and we will have more of that once we are able to, again, get our officers back where they belong, because they've been all over, and then we can align and give more of a system-wide view of what that all looks like.
I also want to share that, remember, these are a couple of people within the system, and we have had turnover, and there's been, at least at the middle school level, there's been new administrators as well. So that could also be an example of a temperature gauge, and with district leadership onboarding administrators on this work as well. So that could be an example of like a targeted outcome from some of the systems health check that we see here.
All right. You can keep them. Okay, there we go. All right. And so when you look at, and so this is just some recommendations that we had for the school, just some generalized ones that we produced for them. They also, like, you'll see when we have the whole system health check presented, that they had other things that they had wonderings about and that they wanted to work on as well as a individual. But these were the overall recommendations that we sent out to the schools after they completed their system health check. And to Zinnia's point around like that bridging that, again, this is like their first understanding around this partnership and kind of just seeing, where it could go. They had a lot of ideas around how they can continue to further that partnership. All right, next slide. All right, so we were able to also, another component of where we are looking at bridging how we utilize our community and supports around partnership with our SROs is we had a FPA meeting where SROs sat with our FPAs to get some insights of, where families are coming from, where they're coming from as, the leads of the family pillar and how we can better partnership. Next slide. And so
Octavia, can you hold on? We have a question.
Oh, sorry.
Octavia, how do the FPAs get that information? You said that they were telling the SROs pretty much how families feel.
Yes.
How did they get that information?
So our family partnership advocates are touch points for our families. So whether they are the one-on-ones, the first contacts when it comes to basic needs, the first contacts when it comes to family engagement. So there's plenty of family engagements that supports the whole school, and they're one of the main leaders of that information. And also they work really closely with, deans and admin as well to be able to support particular families when it comes to needs and things of that nature. So they're a pillar in a lot of the family needs and supports for their school.
So some concrete things, right, would be FPAs work with the school leaders and their equity leadership team to kind of work on family engagement initiatives and things like that. And then there's also surveys that are sent out. There's also they do empathy interviews. So given the protocols of the questions that the community wants to understand, they serve as part of that ethnography team. So it's not just them only, but they work with other staff within their community to be able to get that insight. So broadly, surveys are typically what are offered just for the broader community. And then you have kind of touch points, interviews, and also we note that the day-to-day connections that FPAs have with families are also a way to get the pulse of the community too. So those are some concrete examples. Sorry, Octavia, go ahead.
Okay. All right, so here were some themes that came up in that meeting. So building community of trust. They had a desire to partner with the SROs just because they want to build stronger and trusting relationships with families. And when we're talking about immigration and things like that, there was some conversation about addressing those fears. Um, and then just introducing SROs. Like we had a lot of elementary FPAs that really don't have that day-to-day contact with SROs like we do at the secondary level. And so they really wanted to, know more and have more information around, SROs and how they serve a feeder because our SROs do serve elementaries as well. Next slide. Again, they're addressing basic needs. I think Officer Imus talked about, how they are a resource as well. And I think that was an aha moment for our FPAs, like how they can partner with SROs and get some of those resources and supports, whether it's around drug use and vaping, or, families navigating social media and, school attendance and things like that. And so those were some of the things that came up. And, I think that furthered a deeper conversation around how they can be served as a resource for FPAs. Next slide. Attendance support. We have a district-wide initiative around chronic absenteeism. So they talked about how there's a need for more upstream interventions when we're talking about that, and how joint efforts from SROs could be helpful when in a more positive way instead of a punitive way when we're supporting attendance. And they also talked about buddy systems and how it could be helpful when we're talking about, students missing the bus and transportation. Like I know, for instance, Officer Imus had a lot of insight about a certain family that, one of our FPAs didn't have a lot of insight when it came to transportation. And so that was a great connection and support there that I don't think people knew that those type of connections were happening. Next slide. And then we had some action items from this meeting. So that what came on the Tiger side specifically was more, again, a collaboration about attendance, increased elementary exposure, whether it's like at more events. I think they talked about going to multicultural nights at Tualatin Elementary, but some other elementaries to be included in some of those as well. And create introductions for new students and families. As you know, we are focusing on our newcomer, like a newcomer system to support new students in our district. So really being able to communicate that out to families and students about how SROs show up in our district is ideal to be able to support the work of having a better partnership with our SROs. On the Tualatin side, they just talked about how they wanted to continue to invite SROs to community things just to strengthen how they look and how they show up. Create a multilingual communication. And I think that was one of the main things that needed to happen. Like I just shared the scope of work, and it needs to be in Spanish as well and other things. So just making sure that we are doing a lot of the multilingual communication when it comes to our SROs. And create, continue to invite them to cultural events, student-led initiatives, having our students see and even maybe want to invite. I know that Officer Imus talked about students invite him to things all the time. So just really highlighting those kind of connections that are student-led. And which this planned joint communications during emergencies to reduce misinformation is really big, because I believe they were feeling like, you know, the difference between a lockdown and a hold and all those type of things, I think was the reason behind that. And I think there just needed to be a further understanding between when officers are involved and, you know, being able to protect the privacy of students when any of those things happen. That's all I got, y'all.
All right, let's open it up for like could be like again going the 4Cs. Any connections, clarifications, or conflicts or curiosities that are coming up?
Yeah, I have one, Octavian, also Xenia too. Like I think the SRO partnership with the FPAs, I think that's a great opportunity and whatnot. And I would look forward to hearing how it works out and you know, next year, because it's definitely one of those things where I could expect, you know, good things about it, but it could also, you know, there could also be aspects of it that might not work great. Like just like sort of not saying that it would happen or whatever, but like, you know, FPA reaches out to SRO so that the SRO can then like get in touch with the family, and like, well, that's probably not always going to be the best way to do things, right? So like, just want to know more detail about how that partnership will work, you know, and how the SROs can directly benefit the family partnership advocates as well as families in our community.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I think one of the things that I was trying to prime up to earlier was we really want to get the preventative and proactive. So it's less of a response to certain things, but more of a, you know, we're a big believer of like trauma informed care, and choice, voice, and mutuality is a major component of that. So being able to like offer opportunities to hear from our SROs, because one of the things that has come up from different family groups is, you know, there is a concern about drug use. There is a concern about, you know, some of the things that were highlighted earlier related to what Officer Miller talked about related to relationships, social media, all those things. So being able to, again, follow the trends of what we're seeing that families are curious about and like students are curious about, I think is a like that's the type of engagement that we're looking at, less of the like reactionary or like, does that make sense? So it's more around the preventative and proactive education information, and that's in alignment with what we're trying to do with our family pillar anyway. You know, Nina's here. We can talk about like as a department, we've been really honed in on, after a few years of equity initiatives, one of the major gaps we have in our system is family and community partnership and engagement. And so knowing that that's the kind of service profiles of our family partnership advocates in an area that we all need to work on, I think being able to also partner with other, you know, community partners that are seeking to do the same thing is what we're aiming to do. Less about the reactionary, but more about the preventative and proactive.
But even on the reactionary side, like being able to provide connections to services or whatever, that type of stuff too, which is still essentially reactionary, but it's reactionary in a positive way, trying to help provide support and services to families that need it. And so, yeah, having the SROs be just another connection point for FPAs to be like, hey, do you have an idea on how to assist or help this family out? I think that's a good opportunity.
I just think it's odd that I didn't even know we had an FPA. I have kids in 2 different schools, and I mean, I'm fairly new to the district, but it's my 2nd year, and I have no idea who this person is in either one of my kids' schools. And so when I said, well, how are they getting this information? And I think I'm a pretty involved parent. I mean, you know, like everyone else, I can get buried in my emails and be like, oh, maybe I missed something. But I do think that that is a problem, that I'm trying to be involved in my kids' lives, and I have no idea that we have this resource.
I would say both of your schools where your kids are, there's been a gap there because we've had to fill those positions. I'm so sorry. But right now there's currently a gap at Tigard, and then Fowler's just started, I think, 4 months ago. So yeah, she's pretty new. So yeah, it's that might be the reason why.
I'm feeling good now because I'm like, man, am I just a terrible parent?
Oh, you're not.
So this is great.
But since we have you on the topic, like what would you want to see as a parent from a family partnership advocate? What are the things that you'd want to see?
I think surveys are a good start. Just to find out what are people thinking, feeling, what do they need, and then presenting. So often, I know as a researcher, we collect stuff and then we never tell people what we have found because I want to know: am I the only one that thinks this way? Am I normal? What's the breakdown along race? All those different things. I know, as a Black person, that might not be able to be reported because it's such a small group. But yeah, I would start with surveys and then go from there. I don't really know what this person is supposed to be doing, so it's hard for me to suggest what I would want from them.
Sounds like that might be one of our next topics. Is that like what's the function of our FPAs?
Yeah, well, I think it's also a good reminder and opportunity. I don't know what the day is, but at the end of the year gathering with the FPAs and the or building equity coordinators, right, that we put off, like, or not we, but that you and in your area puts off. But I think, again, I believe we had an invite to that last year. I mean, I know people have work in that type of stuff, but I mean, if you are able to go to it, I was able to go to it last year, and that way you do have an opportunity to see some of the work that's done. I don't know, Zinnia, if you want to talk more about that and when that might be.
I wonder if Nina might be willing to share a little bit just around as a staff, like what have you seen in partnership with FPAs? And then also students, if you have had experience with family partnership advocates, you can also share too.
I would say, as far as visibility is, to get to that challenge for you, that is definitely a staffing thing. So our FPA was new to our school, and she was hired in the summer, but she will go to back to school nights, and she has her own table, and she'll go to kinder care or kinder registration nights. And she will also she does PTO meetings. I think like not every month, but maybe every other month, and she'll do like cooking classes with the PTO. So it's really dependent on the building and how the administrator helps them navigate reaching certain communities in our building. And then for me, all teachers, staff, classified and licensed, that's really our point person whenever we know that a student is struggling with basic needs. And so at the beginning of the school year, they kind of give you like a menu of like, what are things that we help with? And it can be a variety of things. So yeah, I think it's just dependent on, having that relationship. And then obviously like, and for me, I'm lucky because I am a building equity coordinator, so I work really closely with her, and we plan events together. But I think everyone in our school for sure knows like that she is the point person whenever there is a family that needs something or a resource. So yeah.
I want to say at Tigard we currently don't have one. But previously in previous years and like earlier this school year when we used to have one, like she would always go to like our equity meetings and would always like go to our student roundtables. So like our affinity and alliance group presidents would be able to get to know her and be able to go up to her and be like, hey, like we have questions about this. She was really easy to like access and stuff, but not the entire student body knew about her. And so being able to be like, hey, like we have an FBA, like if you have needs, like please feel free to go to them. I know that might also overload them as well, but just having that resource be more open and available for people is something I feel like we should do.
That's a really good point, Moss, about attending equity meetings, because our FBA also goes to our data meetings and they will share, hey, like for this grade, these are the things I supported with this month. And so that increases the visibility again. So not just being the family resource, but also having meetings with staff about, even if, she works on the attendance team. She is just like she wears all the hats in the school. So that is really helpful.
This is my first year at Tigard, and I've never heard of like what was it? Yeah, the FPA. So I have never really heard of that. And so last year I was at Fowler, and also didn't hear anything about that. But I was part of a program where I had like a youth essential coordinator who had offered like resources to me if I ever needed anything, which I thought was nice that he like told me directly because I was struggling at a time. But I think having more resources available, like not just to students but to parents, and let them know about things would be really beneficial.
When you said uh, the Youth Essential Core, is that from REAP? Yeah. So we have community partners with REAP as well, and they work in concert. Octavia's role is to work and facilitate those community partners. So think of and so one of the things that we also are trying to like work through with our equity team is instead of having yes they are like the point of contact for students with basic needs and things like that, but we also know that family engagement and family partnership doesn't happen through one person. So being able to facilitate not just that contact with the families, but also building a system and infrastructure for family engagement is part of their role as well. So I think those are great questions, and I think those are important things to be able to share with, because Octavia also works with our social services manager to work with our family partnership advocates and our administrators to make sure that more families are understand. I know some FPAs have like a little section of the newsletter where they also share some of these. So maybe that might be like a promising practice that we could also offer so that we have more visibility outward too. Yeah.
What is the difference between the building equity coordinator and the FPA? When would I go to one and not the other? And does every single building have its own building equity coordinator? And then who's that person for for Fowler
Great
and Tigard?
question. A building equity coordinator is not its own role, so it's typically someone that either already has a classified or licensed role. So I'm a full-time teacher, but I also attend equity meetings, and I'm trained by the equity department to carry out PDs to staff on various things like bias and incident. Procedures and protocols. And then I also work closely with FPA to do family engagement. So it's not its own role. It's a little smaller, but it's still a lot of work. And I do love it. But yeah, so that is the biggest difference. And so you would go to a building equity coordinator if you feel like you have a question about maybe a bias or an incident in the building. And then I would probably reach out to Zinnia, or I could be at like a liaison for that. But it's more so to like build capacity in staff and yeah, in the community. Mm-hmm.
And you can find, typically they're on the internet. It's on each website, school website. About us, it'll say like equity, and then you could see who the leads are for that too. All right, what a robust conversation. And now I think we have some like insights for maybe other roundtables that we might have in the future, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. And I appreciate people putting their comments in the document, so feel free to continue to do so. And again, if it's after the meeting and you think of something, again, you have access to this, so feel free to put information in there. I did want to read Jarvis's response, though, regarding, because this was from one of our early exercises, what do you want to see, do, and learn this year? And there were questions about how is safety taught in our schools, right? Like fire drills and that type of stuff. And so we were going to have Jarvis come present on that. So I can read his response. And again, if people have any questions about it or whatever, feel free to put it in the document there, and we can include that. But yeah, as far as how is safety taught, or how are staff and teachers trained about safety and whatnot, and then how are students then taught was the request basically. Jarvis said that by law, we are required to conduct a fire drill every month, 2 lockdown and secure drills per year, and 2 earthquake drills per year. Training for staff on fire and earthquake drills tends to be fairly straightforward, as most have been practicing them since childhood. However, we take extra time to train staff on lockdown and secure procedures, usually during a staff meeting before the first drill of the school year. For students, lockdown and secure drills are introduced a few days in advance. Teachers review the procedures with their classes, allowing time to answer any questions students might have and ease any concerns. When it comes to students who need accommodations, we approach this on a case-by-case basis. Accommodations are often developed based on a teacher's experience with a student or at the request of a parent. For example, when my son was in elementary school, we arranged for him to receive at least a week's notice before a fire drill because of his anxiety. Schools can also provide ear protection for students who are sensitive to loud noises. Additionally, if a student has a 504 plan or an IEP, specific supports for drills can be formally documented there. To ensure with compliance with state requirements, I also maintain a district-wide Google document where each school logs completed drills. This allows us to monitor and confirm that all schools are meeting expectations. So yeah, that was his response, and I think one of the questions and concerns was, again, with kids that may have certain needs during those drills, and so those opportunities are there, but it is dependent upon, it does seem like it's dependent upon the teacher and or the parents to notify the school or notify if those needs need to be present. So yeah, if you have any follow-up questions to that, please feel free to put that in the document and we can include that in the annual report. Awesome, and with that, yeah, our next meeting is in only 2 weeks. So in 2 weeks, we will be meeting again here in person. That's where we will be doing the cabinet roundtable. So we will be having 4, correct me if I'm wrong, Zinnia, I think it's 4 groups. We'll be having academics, HR, communications, and climate. That's right, in climate. So we will have 4 tables basically. So as many people that show up, you will be able to pick and go to one of those round tables where we will be doing kind of like a SWOT analysis similar to last year. So we'll be doing that and then coming back to the table and doing a round robin, sharing about what we heard. All right, and with that, thank you very much, everybody. Have a great night, and we'll